first chakra is also the first chakra to be formed, and as such it's a very important link between the spirit and the body. The formation of the first chakra tells us a lot about whether or not the spirit is really becoming linked with the body. So some people have a relatively deficient first chakra, and this can mean several things. It can mean that it is very easy for their spirit to go out of their body, so they have a talent for astral traveling. But more often it will show a reluctance or hesitation of the spirit to take another incarnation. It might be that the spirit carries a lot of traumas from earlier lives or earlier experiences, or that it finds the world confusing or its task daunting. So often relatively weak or deficient first chakra shows that the spirit is not completely devoted to accomplishing the goals in life. So often people who have a weaker first chakra tend to have a very challenging life, and they often lack the power to overcome their difficulties. Fortunately, problems with the first chakra are quite rare. It doesn't happen often that a person is really deficient in the first chakra. But if a person is, it will usually affect the development of all other chakras. So while in 99% of the time there isn't a problem, it is very important to check, because any problems which you do find there can be quite powerful in their impact upon the person's development. If you're meditating on the first chakra, it's important not just to meditate on the body, but also very much on the link with the body. The first chakra is also necessary for a person to access their talents and their memories, the skills they built up in their previous incarnations. So a deficient first chakra also means that a person is often not managing to access their talents very well, which can of course be very, very frustrating. To work with the first chakra, the person needs to have a certain confidence. Their spirit needs to have confidence in their body, in their ability to fulfill their mission, their goals in life, and to have enough support and stimulation from their environment. And if by any event this trust is damaged, for instance when the child is orphaned or traumatized, then also a problem in the first chakra can occur. What often also happens is that the first chakra becomes a little bit polluted with colors from the higher chakras. Ideally, a person would use the first chakra just to access their powers from the previous incarnations, and this will result in a deep red or earthy red color. If, however, the person doesn't have enough confidence and the person becomes very stressed, it's very common to find that yellow starts to blend in from the third chakra down into the first chakra. So this is a very common type of pollution, and this is often an indication that a person feels that they need to be more powerful, and this often translates in that they need to be more aggressive to be able to survive in the world, to be able to cope, to be able to manage. This is a very common problem with this, with the first chakra. The size of the first chakra also varies a lot. Some people have a quite huge first chakra, really like a skirt going almost all the way to the ground, but more typically it goes down to about a knee level. And in a way this is all you need. If the chakra comes down to knee level, that usually shows that the chakra is large enough and developed well enough to allow a person access to their environment and to their own talents. If it goes all the way down, to the feet or to the shins, this is usually an indication that a person has brought more with them from their previous life, which often includes a kind of an emotional stability or long-sighted view upon their own emotions, because they don't people tend not to get lost as much in their own emotions, but rather to see them from the perspective of multiple lifetimes. So a very long first chakra. It's a good indication of emotional stability and also stability of the personality. The personality structures tend to be more developed in a person whose first chakra is of such an extraordinary size. Conversely, if a person has a very short first chakra, then often the person will need a lot of stimulation from their environment to access their own talents, to start developing these talents into skills. So you could say a very long first chakra, the person is more independent or dependent upon their own inclinations rather than the environment. A very short first chakra often shows a very high level of dependency on their environment. And of course, a good environment is very important for everybody and is conducive. But for a person who has a very long first chakra, it is not essential. They can manage in very tough circumstances. So even if the circumstances are not very good for their growing up, they tend to manage to develop themselves and to overcome the difficulties which may hinder their development in their youth. While if a person has a very short first chakra and the circumstances in their youth are very heavy, possibly no parents, a single parent, addiction of parents, or similar problems can severely influence also the development of that individual. So if you're looking at a person who is in danger from their environment, then if this coincides with a very short first chakra, the person will need extra help and extra care to manage their development. If we're looking at the shape of the first chakra, it tends to be more narrow than other chakras. Many other chakras that can be very narrow, like about maybe 10 centimeters up to easily 30 or 40 in diameter at their mouth. The first chakra tends to be a more narrow chakra, so it will barely be wider than the feet, like at most half a meter. It seldomly spreads really wide to about a meter, even if it is quite long. This is also because most people are focused on, you could say, their own existence. So we incarnate from one life to another, and this is a single thread. So this is also why the chakra tends to be narrow, because you focus on your own experience, your own lives. It is possible for a spirit to split itself and to incarnate in different bodies, or to, in a way, we are all splitting ourselves into the part which incarnates in the higher self, which stays in the astral. And in the same way also the astral self can split itself into several astral bodies which go off and do several different things. And in such a case, then you would have actually very not just a single thread of experience which is leading to your present incarnation, but rather multiple threads of experience of all the different aspects or fragments of your spirit, which are all doing their own thing, and then finally joining in one incarnation again. And if you have such an extraordinary individual, which may be like a tulku or a lama who has had several incarnations and then joins them, or spiritual masters, these people can have very wide first chakras, but it is quite uncommon. Also, people whose spirits are of an extra solar origin, so are not from this solar system, these people also tend to have much wider first chakras, basically to gather all these little snippets of experience which are lying around in this solar system to help them to get a little bit grounded in this new and to them very alien form and alien planet and alien society which they find themselves in. So I would say that these wide chakras happen maybe in 1 or 2% of people, and usually those people are quite extraordinary if you find them. And as I said, like, it can be a very positive thing if the person has indeed had such spiritual maturity that they can manage and join several lifetimes. But it can also be a sign of a trauma. A person can also have their spirit split because of disharmony and inability to accept their own dark side, for instance, and then also the spirit will shatter, and you can try to rejoin the pieces also by having a very wide first chakra to invite these other fragments of your spirit to harmonize again and to become part of your incarnation again. So it can also signify such challenges. So it is not clearly positive or negative, but it does show that the person has a much more complex history than usual. The length of the first chakra can also be an indication of having a long will. The long will is much more a structure within the second chakra, and if a person has a long will, this usually means that the spirit has a focus to develop something which will actually take several lifetimes to develop. And by maintaining the focus over several incarnations and in between incarnations, the person can build up skills from one incarnation to the next, wisdom, memory, abilities. And often a person which has this long will need also a slightly longer first chakra to access the abilities they have created, but it is not always true. It is possible for a person with a long will to just incorporate all these skills directly into the body, so then they're more in the knees and in the upper legs, and even a short or shorter first chakra will suffice to access these. But it will often go together, because if the person is overcome by their emotions, then also the long will is threatened. They might lose their way in their current lifetime if their personality is not stable enough to continue on the path they're on. So often people who have this long will don't tend to have an extremely long first chakra, but definitely beyond the knees is quite common. Just below the knee can be an indication that the person might have long will, and then that they will, if this is so, that they will have had a stable goal for at least 3 or 4 lifetimes. The width of the chakra, as I said, is also showing the person's ability to tap from multiple sources. So a person with also a slightly wider first chakra this can often also be an indication that the person is able to work with the powers in their environment. So often people who work in nature-related religions like shamanism, druidism, paganism, Wicca, these people also tend to have wider first chakras, because in a way nature itself, the planet itself, the spirits in nature, the plants, the stones, these are also in a way their skill, their power, which they tap into and which they in a way blend into themselves as a talent. So the ability to work with elemental beings and nature beings and the energies in nature also comes through the first chakra for a large part. So also here the width can be an indication, but it is not a necessity. It is also possible for a person to develop other alternative channels to work with the energies around them through initiation or through their aura. But often if a person is, you could say, like born with a nature magic talent, or especially also with an elemental talent, it will often show in the width of the first chakra. Then there's also the position of the first chakra. So it can be long or short, we discussed. It can be wide or narrow, but also it can be tilted or deformed. Instead of being round, being like more oval or squeezed. Often, when the chakra moves from left to right, it is showing that the person is accessing things either in their left leg or in their right leg. And this is often that people store different types of skills in one leg or the other. So people tend to have a dominant side, in my case the right hand side, and this is, yeah, you could say the more masculine, more active, outward focused abilities. And you have the left hand side, which is more introverted, about self-development, growth, wisdom, developing your intuition. So the more feminine side. So often a chakra which is tilted, showing that the person is at that time focusing more on these or the other talents. So a slight left or right imbalance is usually also a temporary thing, because it takes time to develop something, and typically you would say to really access a talent and to develop it into a skill would take 4 or 5 months. So it is very normal if you look at a person, it is tilted slightly left, slightly right, and if you see them like a year later or half a year later, it will have switched or will have moved. This is quite okay. Persons can also just access things on both sides, and then the chakra will be more or less in the middle. If the chakra is moved forward or backward, this is usually showing a slightly a bigger or more important imbalance. Often if the chakra is moved forward, the person is actually finding it very hard to cope. So it's often a sign that the person doesn't find within themselves the necessary skills or talents or experience, and that they're in a way reaching out into their environment, so that they're very much trying to learn, trying to be supported by somebody else, trying to be inspired by somebody else. So often a person whose chakra is moved forward a lot will in a way be looking for something or someone. So these people also tend to fall in love very strongly, very happily with a person who has that one thing they're looking for. And often they will be very confused because their sensation will be very deep, very physical, very passionate, and that, in a few months these feelings will dissipate. It can be a very confusing thing, but if you find this pattern, then the person should actually realize that, yes, I'm head over heels in falling in love with this other person, but not so much because of their personality or because I love them, but actually because I need them for my spiritual development. And this is the role they have to play, and of course they can play that role in the form of an intimate relationship, but your ultimate goal is not the intimate relationship. Your goal is your self-development, which is very different from if the relationship really comes from the heart. But especially in young people, where also the drive to grow and to access these talents in the critical phases of your development is very strong. This happens a lot, that people have this very physical urge to to go into an intimate relationship with a person who has the, you could say, the key to your development. When the chakra is focused backward, it also shows that the person is in a way not managing, not coping, but rather than searching outward, they're searching inward. So often when the first chakra is tilted backward, it is a sign that the person is in depression or stress or in a burnout or having some other quite challenging situation. And often it is not actually the case that the person can't manage, that they're actually lacking in power or lacking in skill, but rather that they are not managing their environment well enough. And if the person starts relating in a more controlled way with their environment, and setting more realistic goals for themselves, then also the chakra can start to normalize. But it's really important to build up the person's coping skills so that they can deal with the pressures and the challenges which their social environment is putting upon them. Especially if a person is very, could say, perfectionist, or very moral. They want to do things in a proper way, or they're very social, they don't want to say no to anybody, they want to support everybody. That also this imbalance in the first chakra may happen. But the cause is then not the first chakra, the cause is usually the heart chakra or the throat chakra or the third chakra. So people either cannot defend themselves with the third chakra, keep out influences which are unwelcome, or people's heart chakras in a way over-connect, they over-identify with somebody else, so they take on everybody else's, you could say, baggage or the things they need to do, or they cannot be strong enough in communication or be clear enough to set limits, like this is what I do, this is what you do. So often the strengthening of these communication chakras will help to fix the imbalance of the first chakra when it is tilted too far backwards. If you have a chakra which is relatively flattened, so like oval, not going forward or backward very much, it often shows that the person is very focused on mining their own skills, mining their own abilities. So this is often something which is found in artists. So artists are often working much more with their own inspiration, with their own emotions, with their own ideas, than relying on their environment or the people around them. And often quite happy working alone or working with only very select few people who can support or understand their work or their activities. If the opposite is true, if the chakra is oval in this way, so more forward to backward, then often the person will tend to be, you could say, not so much in a position where they have really developed or are developing or using their skills. So it can be that the person in a way has to change job or change function, and they end up in a situation where their skills don't match the requirements of their job. And then the person will feel very unbalanced, very unstable, and will start to, in a way, rely or to communicate or manipulate a lot with their environment to get them to do what needs to be done, or to, in a way, borrow or learn skills from the others so they can manage their job, even though they have no talent for it. So if you see this type of structure, it really shows that the person is not in the right place, that there is a mismatch between the demands which are made upon them and the skills they have. So a person with that, you would typically say, change your job, change your function, talk with your boss, talk with your colleagues, and see if you can change your workload. It's not that you're not talented, it is that your talents don't match your position. So, first chakra has a very big impact, and it can be impacted by the environment, but also this impacting by the environment is a relatively slow process. So chakras can respond very quickly, and the first chakra will respond quickly to a very negative environment. If the energy is bad in the environment, the first chakra will actually shrink. Not to pick up, you could say, instead of skills, sins or bad habits. But other than that, it tends to be quite stable in regards to what you're doing, what activities you're involved in, what type of people are around you. So mainly these responses to the environment tend to come more from the second and third chakra than from the first chakra. Different environment will force a person to focus on different skills, so there will be differences in the first chakra, but usually not the size or shape which will change. Rather, the energy flow within the chakra is used to deal with the different challenges, just to access different talents in different situations, but not really to change the attitude of the person. That only happens when there is more of a long-term problem, like going on for 2 or 3 months, or something which is extremely traumatic can cause a change in the first chakra. But in general, it's a very stable chakra, a really solid foundation for a person's growth and development. I talked a little bit about the pollution which can happen, especially from the third chakra, where the person in a way becomes more aggressive and starts to rely on strength rather than their own skill, rather than having confidence. Another problem which can also happen is that there's too much blend-in of the heart chakra. And this often shows that a person is has been trained to become very conditional in regards to their own skills and their own powers. So if a person has received a lot of criticism, they've been told they're bad, they're worthless, they're not good enough, they're stupid, or things like this, then the person will not be able to rely on their own abilities, on their own skills. And only if the person is in a way getting permission from the environment that they will say, it's okay to do this, or please do this, or you can do it, or in some other way opens the door to their own talents or to their own skills, then will it function. So often green blended into the base chakra will show that the person has had some period of severe repression or criticism in their life. And just like the blend-in of the third chakra, it often becomes a very big part of the whole personality structure. So blend-in of the third chakra, often the person becomes very aggressive, short-tempered, overbearing, and with the blend-in of the green from the heart chakra, often the person becomes very submissive, unsure of themselves, lacking confidence, and starts to have a very appeasing behavior, rather adapting to their environment than being a more Mars type person who can use their power and their skill to change their environment. So often these people are very pleasant to be around because they're trying to be harmonious with their environment and trying to adapt to what the environment is asking of them. But even though they can fit in very nicely and can be very appreciated for that, they're not able to access their full potential. So it is good if such a person can be helped. But these pollutions coming from heart chakra and third chakra, you can try to correct them, of course, with a chakra treatment. But because there is so much emotional events which are at the base of that, and so many convictions about themselves which have happened over the years, it's often also a process of many years to correct these imbalances. And I believe that also hypnotherapy or trance journeying can be necessary to make the healing effect of purifying the first chakra and sending these energies back to the chakras where they belong, to make it last, to make it a more stable thing. And of course, if people are slowly but surely getting into a more supportive environment and their self-confidence becomes bigger, then slowly but surely also these impurities will start to disappear. But it is often a lifelong debility if the first chakra's colors become polluted. So I hope this will have provided you some insights into the importance of the first chakra and typical imbalances which can be found there.